Hey, what's up everybody? This is Justin with Sillage Scents. Today I've got a video for you that I've really been looking forward to. I've been putting a lot of thought into. This is about fragrances that every man should own, or more specifically, anybody who's building a collection. You know, if you're maybe you're interested in having, say, 25 fragrances or something like that or more. These are some that are very significant for one reason or another. Maybe they kind of launched a particular kind of fragrance DNA, or maybe they've been very influential, or maybe they're just unique and something that every person should smell because they're almost legendary by this point. So that's what these fragrances are about. Not all of them are super unique. Since some of them kick something off, there's now many things that smell like them. Some of them are the original, where there's flankers that are now more popular than the original. But these are 10 that I think have real significance, and you might want to consider picking them up if you're wanting to have a well-rounded collection that is representative of some different fragrances that are out there as a whole. So we're going to go ahead and get into the actual 10 that I've chosen, but as we get going, I want to ask you to subscribe to my channel. I've got a few videos coming out a week. Tons of you have been subscribing. I really appreciate that. And also let me know in the chat as we're going, in the comments section, do you have any of these, or what would be your list of kind of essential fragrances for someone who wants to have a collection that represents what's out there? All right, let's go ahead and I'll begin with one that is a new release, but it is an awesome fragrance. And this is actually a flanker to one this is the only niche fragrance in this video, but you can get it at designer prices all day long. This is Sadrat Boise Intense. Now, Sadrat Boise, I've heard it described as a bright fruit basket in a wicker basket. So sort of bright fruits in a wicker basket. And so what that means is you've got some beautiful citrus and other fruity notes with some woods and some leather that are in the base. The difference with the Intense is you do get improved performance, and you've got an oud note that's added, and the leather is ramped up a little bit. To be honest with you, I don't get much of the oud or the leather, although in the dry down you do get something that is slightly dry and slightly dark. It's not all that different from the original, but what you get with Sadrat Boise, either the Intense or the original, is one of the most incredible, fruity, incredibly versatile fragrances that you will ever put your nose on. They're both great performers, although it's very easy to go nose blind to this fragrance, or to get anosmia, where you smell it and your senses are soon overwhelmed and then you just can't smell it anymore. But this is a great one that's really made a splash these last few years. The next one I'll mention, this one is a classic, and it's still being advertised. I think this one came out in around 10 years ago. 2008, so 14 years ago that this one came out. And there's been a number of flankers that are really good, but I put the original in here because it's still a top-selling fragrance. It's still one that people are wearing and that people love, and you kind of want to know what this one smells like because it's influenced a lot of fragrances. And I remember the first time I smelled it, I thought, that is amazing. And I'm talking about just the original Paco Rabanne 1 Million. This is an incredible fragrance. Some of the notes that you've got in the top, you've got some mandarin orange, grapefruit, and mint. I don't get much of the mint, but you definitely get that citrus in the opening. And then you've got cinnamon, spicy notes, and rose. And again, I don't get much of the rose, but you definitely get the spicy notes. So you start with that bright citrus, then you go into the spicy notes, which is sort of a pattern that a lot of fragrances use. And then in the base, you've got amber, leather, woods, and patchouli. And what it comes out to is this incredible, bright, sweet fragrance that's got some spicy, woodsy, slightly leathery tones in the dry down, and it is awesome. There's a reason that this is one of the best-selling fragrances of probably the last 14 years or so since it came out. Some of the flankers have been great. I have 1 Million Lucky. The discontinued Privé is awesome. The Elixir is awesome. But I went with the original in this video. All right, the next one I'll go with. Why don't we go with another one that is a classic? This is a huge seller, and it's been so influential that tons of fragrances have come out with a flanker that smells at least a little bit like this one. And I'm talking about Versace Eros. This has been kind of the clubbing king of late, similar to 1 Million, but that's certainly not all that it can be used for. Now, I have a smaller bottle of the EDT and Eros Flame, and they both have their uses, but this one is the EDP. And what you have in Eros, the main things you need to know is you've got a citrus, mint, vanilla mix that is absolutely incredible. You've also got in the EDP a candied apple note in the opening. In the EDT, you've got a green apple note. The difference between the EDT, the original, it's a little more youthful, a little more sweet, a little more loud in projection. However, the EDP is longer lasting, slightly more mature, although not a whole lot. And to me, I think the mint is actually amped up a little bit in this one. I don't have the Parfum. It strayed away a bit from the original DNA. I like it, but it's just not one that I have picked up yet. But Eros is huge, and if you want a fragrance collection that represents what's out there, you probably want to add Eros to that. Okay. Why don't we go with, for the next one, this one, the original Spice Bomb. So the original Spice Bomb, it's not that there's a ton of things that smell like this, although there are a few, but I remember the first time I smelled Spice Bomb, I was mesmerized. I was thinking, I've never smelled anything like this. I love spicy fragrances, and what you have here is a very complex, sweet, and powerful fragrance. Now, my bottle is about, I think, 1.5 years old or so, and it still has good performance. It'll still last about 8 hours. It's got good projection. It doesn't last anywhere near like Spice Bomb Extreme lasts, but I put the original Spice Bomb in here because the original, even though it spawned great flankers, this fragrance really broke some new ground whenever it came out, and it is beautiful. Some of the notes that you get in Spice Bomb, you've got pink pepper, elemi, bergamot, and grapefruit in the opening. You do get a little citrus with that pepper in the opening is what you get right off the bat. And then as we go on into the mid, you've got cinnamon, saffron, and paprika. And the cinnamon you definitely get mixing with that pepper, that sort of edgy spice. This is a sharply spiced fragrance, and I absolutely love that about it. And since it is a fresh, spicy fragrance, I wear this all year round. To me, this is the most versatile of the Spice Bomb line. You can wear it in the summer, just significantly dial your sprays back. You can wear it spring, fall, and winter, and I think it works great for all seasons. Just know what situation you're going to be in and how much you're going to be spraying, but you can't beat Spice Bomb. And then in the base, you've got tobacco, leather, and vetiver. I definitely get the tobacco and the leather. I don't know that I necessarily pick up a vetiver note, but man, this is a great fragrance and one that if you haven't smelled, you should definitely check out. All right, why don't we go next to this one? This is a classic. I remember when this came out, I was walking in downtown Kansas City with my wife, and we wandered into a Dolce Gabbana little boutique, and I smelled this fragrance, and I thought, man, I have got to get this fragrance. I got online, I found it at a little bit of a discount, but this one is still my favorite. I've gone through 3 bottles over the last 15 years. I think it's been maybe 15, maybe even a little longer than that since this came out, maybe 16 years. Dolce & Gabbana The One. Now, this is the EDT. I get good performance out of the EDT. I'll get 6 to 8 hours out of this easily. Some people say they don't get good performance and they'll go with the EDP, which does perform a little better and it's got some notes that are amped up. I love the original just as much though. And what you've got in this awesome fragrance, you've got in the top grapefruit, coriander, and basil. And then in the mid, you've got a ginger and cardamom mix. And so that fruity, just slightly fruity opening, which is very bright, very magical, but mixing with that ginger and cardamom is what kind of makes this fragrance, especially for the first hour or so. That not overly spicy, not overly sweet spice mixing with those citrus notes. And then in the dry down, you've got amber, tobacco, and cedar. This is what I would consider to be an amber tobacco fragrance, and those other notes just kind of emphasize what's in the base there. And it's legendary at this point. Nothing smells quite like Dolce Gabbana The One. Next up, why don't we go with this one, which is, again, kind of a modern classic, and that's why it's in this video. It's a very unique fragrance that, again, I think you can wear all year round. The winter is probably least suitable for this one, but you can wear it in the winter, and you can definitely wear it in the spring, the summer, and the fall. This is Terre d'Hermes by Hermes. Now, this is a beautiful, earthy citrus vetiver scent. Now, in the opening and really throughout the fragrance, you get this orangey scent with some earthiness. Some people will say like a dirty orange. To me, it's more earthy than it is dirty, you know, but you get this earthy orange fragrance. You do get some of the vetiver immediately. There's one of the flankers that really intensifies that vetiver note, but I prefer the original to it. But it's not a real complex note breakdown. You've got orange and grapefruit in the opening. You've got pepper, pelargonium in the mid, and flint, whatever pelargonium is. And then the base notes, you've got vetiver, cedar, patchouli, and benzoin. And you do get the patchouli, sort of that airy, mystical texture of the patchouli with the vetiver, and then the notes of the orange opening with that earthiness are kind of the main things. That pepperiness as well are some of the main things you get. Again, this is very unique, and there's an airy kind of feel about this fragrance, which is a good performing fragrance. This is like an 8 or 10 hour fragrance. Some people say 14-hour fragrance, and maybe it is, but definitely a full work day you'll get with no problem. And it's so versatile that you can wear it all year round. So Terre d'Hermes is another great one. Next up, let's go with one that, again, has been absolutely legendary and one that has influenced about as many fragrances as anything else that's on the market. I'm talking about Aventis by Creed. Now, I'm going to show you a clone that I have. I don't have the original, but I remember the first time, again, that I smelled Aventis. My wife and I were walking around in downtown Charlotte, and there was someone who was on the sidewalk handing out samples of Creed Aventis, and they gave me 2 little 2 ml sprays, and I took them home, and a few days later I sprayed it on, and I thought, this is one of the most amazing fragrances I've ever smelled. My wife absolutely loved it as well. I thought, man, this is awesome. You know, I made those little sprays last for several months. I would just wear it maybe once a week or something like that. And then I went out to buy it. I believe where it was being handed out was next to a boutique. And so I went there to buy it, and I checked the price, and they told me it was, I think, $350 at the time. This was back in the year that it came out, which I don't have that written down. I think it came out in around 2010, maybe 2012. I could be off on that. I didn't look that up, but it was somewhere around there, 2010 to 12. And I had no idea that there were fragrances that cost that much. So needless to say, I didn't buy it. But I have delved into a number of the clones. And this one is the one that I definitely am wearing the most, the one that I would recommend the most currently. And that is L'Aventure by Al Haramain. Now, this is a great Aventis clone, and it's going to lean a little more fruity Aventis rather than smoky Aventis, although it does have some of the smoke in it. but this is a great Aventis clone and one that really captures that magic that first drew me into Creed Aventis. I've had Armaf Club de Nuit Intense. I never could get past the Lemon Pledge Cleaner opening. I've tried several other clones, but to me, this one is absolutely fantastic, and it's very inexpensive. You can get it for $25 or less. I think sometimes even on Amazon, you can get it for less than $30. But this one is great. I've heard the intense version of L'Aventure, and that's like L apostrophe Aventure is how they spell it. The intense I've heard is also really good with even better performance. But Creed Aventis in any form is essential for your collection. Next up, let's go with one that, again, the first time I smelled it, or this one I'll say the first time I smelled it, I thought it was good. The first time I wore it for a full day, I thought, man, this is one of my favorite fragrances I have ever worn. I'm talking about Yves Saint Laurent Y EDP. So Y EDP is a blue fragrance, but it's a unique blue fragrance. It doesn't smell like Bleu de Chanel or Sauvage or Dylan Blue. It's quite unique in that there's a sweet apple in the opening, there's ginger, there's citrus in the opening, but then in the heart, you've got some geranium, you've got some sage, you've got some herbal notes in the heart that to me absolutely make this fragrance. And this is one of those fragrances that I would say is like a three-dimensional fragrance. You've got that beautiful, sweet citrus ginger opening, and then in the heart, you've got this incredible herbal three-dimensional smell that just is sort of jumping out into your face as you're wearing it. And then in the dry downs, you've got some woods and I believe some vetiver and olibanum and tonka. So you've got some sweetness in the base from that tonka bean as well as the sweetness that comes in the opening. So it's a sweeter blue fragrance, and that mid with those herbal notes absolutely sets it apart from anything else. Even the clones that I've tried of this fragrance are good, but nothing has that three-dimensional, almost supernatural kind of thing that's going on in the mid of this fragrance. So why the eau de parfum? I like it better than the Parfum. I like it better than the EDT. It's my favorite in the line for sure. All right, I've just got two more to mention, I believe, that I haven't mentioned yet. This one just kind of had to be in this video because it is an awesome fragrance. Even though it gets a lot of hate and a whole lot of people have it, this one has sparked almost as much as Bleu de Chanel. This has been responsible for the explosion of brew fragrances. And I'm talking about Sauvage, the EDT. This is just a great ambroxan heavy scent that's got some metallic, peppery, citrus notes in the opening. The actual notes that you get in Sauvage, you've got pepper in the opening with some lavender. You've also got some vetiver, some patchouli, some geranium, and then you've got, that was in the mid, and then in the base you've got ambroxan. But you get what you expect for most of those notes, but two things that I'll mention. The opening of this fragrance is so powerful, and something about that peppery, citrusy, ambroxan metallic blast that you get, I absolutely love it, and I don't think there's anything like it. Even the clones of Sauvage that I've tried, some of them are really good, but none of them quite capture the magic of that opening. And then even more so in the heart of Dior Savage, the EDT, there is something funky in the heart that I absolutely love. I don't know really how to describe it, and I don't even know what notes that necessarily comes from. Maybe it's from the patchouli mixing with the vetiver. Maybe it's the elemi. I'm not real familiar with that note, but there's something funky in the heart that I absolutely love, and no clone that I've smelled can touch what is actually in the original Dior Savage, so I absolutely love it. And of course, Sauvage has some great flankers as well. And then finally, again, we're looking at 10 fragrances that every man should own who really wants to build out a well-representative collection. I think that you would have to have Paco Rabanne Invictus in this list. This fragrance, again, has influenced so many fragrances have almost copied the opening of this fragrance, or just the overall, the profile of the different accords that are in this fragrance. And it still smells fantastic. There's something it's sometimes described as like a bubblegum sweetness in the opening. I think it might even lean a little more towards like a grape bubblegum, which sounds so weird. And then in the dry down, you've got this sort of woodsy patchouli. I'll tell you the actual notes that are in Invictus. You've got aquatic notes, grapefruit, mandarin in the opening. You've got bay leaf, jasmine, and ambergris as well. Middle notes are bay leaf and jasmine. And then in the that was the mid. And then in the base, it says that there's ambergris in this fragrance. I don't know how accurate that is, whether there's real ambergris. I suspect not. It's probably like synthetic amber woods or ambroxan. But that's what they list as notes. Then you've got guaiac wood, oak moss, and patchouli. And all of those things together make a fragrance that, although it is sweet and it is youthful, I still rock the original Invictus. And out of the flankers that I've smelled, I haven't smelled all of them, this is still one of my favorites. Invictus Aqua 2016 is great, but this is still one of my favorites, and one you cannot overestimate the impact of the original Invictus. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you stuck with me. Sorry if it was a little scattered. I was trying to look at a lot of the notes as we were going, as I was forgetting them. But please subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. That way you'll get the new content as it's coming out. And let me know in the comments, again, which ones of these have you tried? Which one's your favorite? And what would be your list of some fragrances that are essential for anybody who wants to build not a tremendously huge collection, but one that represents well what is really out there. All right, thank you so much for being with me. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.